One of the biggest failures of a brand relaunching itself was with Coke in 1985. Coke's biggest rival, Pepsi, began holding taste tests in public areas so that customers could determine which soft drink they preferred. Customers were choosing Pepsi over Coke at an alarming rate, and for Coke, this spelt trouble. So, what did they do? Coke went back to the drawing board, recreated Coke, and changed it to New Coke. New flavor, and new branding. They also forced retailers to clear their shelves overnight of any old Coke products before the relaunch, so that customers were forced to purchase new Coke. Long story short, customers felt betrayed and were angry, forcing Coke to relaunch itself once again. Old Coke became New Coke. This relaunch was a historic failure, costing the company millions, and goes to show why it's important for a company to understand why their consumers like their product. It also goes to show, as a company, you cannot completely overhaul your product and expect or force your consumers to accept it. But what does this have to do with Star Wars? And what does a soft drink have to do with a galaxy far, far away? Well, let's find out. In 2012, Marvel Studios released The Avengers, and Disney, its parent company, owns what will become the biggest film franchise in cinematic history. A few months later, Disney announces the acquisition of Lucasfilm and announces the next Star Wars film, Star Wars Episode 7. The reason why Disney bought Lucasfilm was a similar reason to why they bought Marvel. In an article published by The Guardian, it states that the acquisition of Star Wars represented an opportunity to expand Disney's demographic reach to target male consumers of all ages. Prior to 2012, Disney was successfully producing content for girls through its princess and fairy tale brands. The whole point of Disney buying Star Wars was to acquire a demographic that they were failing to reach. I can even remember from my own personal experiences growing up, Disney was considered a girls' brand because of all the fairy tale princess movies they have made, even though they were also making a plethora of films that catered towards a male demographic. The popularity of Star Wars amongst males, especially young males at that time, was extremely prevalent and is a perfect example of why the toy sales of that era were so high. During my research for this video, I found an article published by Time magazine from 2014 that lists Star Wars action figures in the 9th spot as one of the most influential toys of all time, with Lego being number 1. In an article published by Forbes in 2012, Star Wars action figures earned the number 2 spot of best-selling licensed entertainment products, bringing in about $1.5 billion. Nobody can deny the historic success of the franchise's toy lines and merchandise. From a business point of view, buying Lucasfilm was a smart financial decision on Disney's part, not only to acquire a target demographic that they were failing to reach, but also to profit from selling toys from those franchises that they just purchased. In theory, all Disney had to do was cater towards this target demographic in order to be profitable. So what did the Mouse House do? Disney made Force Awakens, a film that focused on the main character of Rey.
Bravo for them to make Rey a orphan from the desert who discovers inner powers, inherits a robot with important information that leads to the destruction of the Death Star. It's fresh because it's a woman.
Yeah, she is a Mary Sue and all, but what about the male characters? How were they portrayed compared to Rey Palpatine? I mean, Skywalker. Seriously, are they expecting us to really call her that still? I'm going to take 3 original trilogy characters and compare them to how they were portrayed in the original saga and compare them to what Disney has done with them. Ready? Let's go. Luke Skywalker was a farm boy who sought adventure and desired to become a Jedi like his father before him. Through his adventure, Luke learns of his father's sins and redeems him through his nobility. Luke also utilized his greatest weakness, his naivety, and held a great sense of optimism when redeeming his father, a true hero for many. Han Solo was a smuggler who only cared about the prize. However, through Han's heroics, he became a general and developed a greater sense of care not only for his friends, but the galaxy around him. Obi-Wan Kenobi was a wise old mentor who, despite his previous failures, sought to preserve the future hero of the galaxy by watching over him, protecting him, and even sacrificing himself in the process. These characters are heroes that young boys could look up to, aspire to be like, and goes to show why they are so popular amongst the fanbase. Now, Compare them to what Disney turned them into. Luke Skywalker is now a depressed old hermit who turned into a cynic after failing to prevent his nephew from falling to the dark side. A man who is nothing more than a nihilist that acts on compulsion. He is pathetic. Han Solo is not a general anymore, but a smuggler once again that divorced his wife and let his son fall to the dark side. A loser who stumbles around the galaxy with his dog, not even in his own ship. Obi-Wan Kenobi is now a man that, when challenged, runs away and abandons his mission to protect the savior of the galaxy. He acts incompetently and is portrayed foolishly. Even Finn, a Disney-created male hero, became a bumbling idiot. Why would males of all ages be invested in a story if the heroes that they're supposed to look up to and buy into are either losers, bumbling idiots, or failures? If a little boy had a choice between playing with Return of the Jedi Luke or The Last Jedi Luke, I guarantee he will choose Jedi Luke over sad hobo Luke any day. You can argue that they are not supposed to be the heroes of this story, but they are still the same characters. An optimist like Luke wouldn't stop being an optimist. A man like Han Solo who grew up without a family, then got one, would never leave his family. Obi-Wan would never stop protecting Luke after he failed to protect Anakin from falling to the dark side. Audiences can see these inconsistencies within characters like they do with real people. It feels weird, inhuman, and unnatural for a person to do a complete 180 on not only their beliefs, but their morals. Honestly, it says a lot about the people making these things. This is why Star Wars as a brand has become the new Coke. They have taken what their target demographic has loved and turned it into something that they don't. They also are doing nothing to cater towards that demographic that they wanted to acquire in the first place. The Mandalorian was the closest piece of media Disney got to reaching a male target demographic. Yet, after the killer Season 2 finale, which was the last time Star Wars actually felt like Star Wars, Disney turned Bo-Katan into the main protagonist of Season 3. The Mandalorian became a side character in his own show. How pathetic. How can Disney buy a franchise to reach a male target demographic when they're making films and TV shows like the sequel trilogy, Rogue One, Ahsoka, the upcoming Acolyte TV series, and the recently announced Rey movie, which will probably end up like the Marvels? The problem isn't that Disney is making films about female heroes, but failing to create male heroes that stand on equal ground as their female counterparts. Let's use another popular franchise as an example, Harry Potter. Harry Potter is a franchise that both males and females love of all ages. It's got male and female heroes that stand on equal ground with each other. For the male target demographic, it's got the cool wizard battles and adventure, while for the female demographic, it's got the romance and the relatable relationships. There may be an interesting reason why this franchise is so popular amongst males and females that may be on a psychological level. Now, I'm no expert, but I'm making an assumption here. There was a study done that may give us some insight as to why this franchise specifically is so popular amongst males and females. When the company Lego wanted to create a brand that was more easily accessible to girls, they conducted a study on how each gender plays. The company sent out a bunch of anthropologists to study how girls played differently from boys, and what they found was that girls wanted more reality-based toys that let them see themselves as characters, whereas boys liked the more escapist fantasy type stuff like wizards and ninjas. Girls liked playing in reality, while boys liked to escape from it. To sum it up, boys wanted to see themselves as Harry Potter going to Hogwarts, while girls want to see themselves as a character going to Hogwarts. It's a really interesting study because you can actually see this just by looking at the different franchises each demographic is attracted to. For Disney, they could have taken a Harry Potter approach if they wanted to bring in a wider female demographic to the Star Wars franchise and make it gender neutral. Before you mention it, yes, there are girls who do like Star Wars. However, it has always been a small percentage compared to the vast majority of male fans. I'm not saying that Star Wars has a no girls allowed sign hanging over it, yet the women who do enjoy the franchise like it for the same reasons as men do. It's got heroes, space battles, and a story that stands the test of time. While it may not have the Chip and Dale-styled heroes of the MCU, women still love to see men being masculine and heroic. On the flip side, Let's consider Barbie, a brand that is predominantly targeted towards females. Yet, there is probably a small percentage of males who also love Barbie. Much like females who love Star Wars, these males adore Barbie for the same reasons as females do. It would be unwise for Mattel to transform Barbie into a more masculine-style toy to cater towards this small demographic. From a marketing standpoint, as a company, you need to make decisions that best suit your target demographic. Like with New Coke, Coke sought to change their product to cater towards a demographic, the Pepsi consumer, that wasn't interested in their product, and by doing so, they betrayed and alienated their core customer base in the process. Disney did exactly that with the Star Wars brand and made the Force quote-unquote female. Besides the majority of content Lucasfilm has been making, another perfect example of this would be their Forces of Destiny's toy line released in 2018. It was a line of dolls that focused on female characters from the Star Wars franchise, targeting a younger female demographic. The toy line also had a TV show to promote the line. Despite the line not even lasting a year, its cancellation was never confirmed, but after nearly 7 years of not a single figure being released, it's safe to assume that the line was dead on arrival. Female Star Wars characters in Barbie form didn't even work with young girls, so why does Disney continue to try to sell to a demographic that is evidently not interested in the franchise? If a little girl has a choice between a Rey doll or a Barbie doll, she will choose Barbie. This is what happened with the Marvels. Marvel made a superhero movie directed towards females, yet it flopped at the box office. Compare that to the Barbie movie, and it becomes obvious what that target demographic is interested in. Not to mention, Barbie is a bigger property, but that only proves my point. With that being said, what can Lucasfilm and Disney do moving forward? This isn't a new idea, but I first heard this idea from Chris Gore of Film Threat. Disney just needs to make a show, live action or animated, that focuses on the adventures of Luke Skywalker post Return of the Jedi, traveling the galaxy with his companion R2-D2 in his X-Wing. Building off of his initial pitch, it can be episodic with an overarching story centered around Luke helping different civilizations on planets, re-establishing the Jedi Order, and fighting off the last remnants of the Empire while being hunted down by a mysterious Force user, aka Mara Jade. Each episode can have a lesson to learn from, a moral to gain, and can bring back the target demographic Disney originally wanted to acquire in the first place. I'll pitch an episode right now. Luke is on a one-man recon mission in the Outer Rim when he is attacked by a squad of Imperial TIE fighters. After a fierce battle, Luke defeats the squad with ease, but suddenly an Imperial Star Destroyer jumps out of hyperspace. With depleted fuel, overheated weapons, and being extremely outgunned, Luke has no choice but to jump to hyperspace. He desperately dodges the Star Destroyer's blasts, but when he is about to jump to hyperspace, the Star Destroyer clips his ship. Once Luke enters lightspeed, his ship malfunctions, forcing him out of hyperspace and stranding him in the middle of the galaxy with nobody to call to. Luke now has to repair his ship in the vacuum of space with limited oxygen, food, and time as the Star Destroyer knows half of his coordinates and is searching for him. In the end, Luke and R2 fix the ship just as the Star Destroyer exits lightspeed, and our heroes escape. An episode like this can teach an audience, especially a male audience, self-reliance, teamwork, and the ability to think during a tough situation. I'll go one step further and say that it also shows an audience how to know their own limitations. Unfortunately, Disney won't make a Luke Skywalker TV show. They only want limited cameos from the original trilogy characters so that their own corporate-approved characters can shine. To conclude this video, Disney has turned Star Wars into the new Coke of Hollywood. The same can be said for the Marvel Cinematic Universe if it keeps barreling down the path that it is currently on. Like with New Coke, Disney pulled a bait and switch on their consumers and tried forcing them to like new Star Wars while completely disregarding what made people love the franchise in the first place. Instead of admitting to their failure, course correcting, and creating content for the initial target demographic that they wanted to acquire, they instead continue to make content directed towards a target demographic that isn't interested. I predict that by the time that the Rey movie or the Filoni movie comes out, if they even do, Star Wars will be a completely dead franchise. Nobody outside of a small niche of collectors will be buying the toys, watching the TV shows, and the films will be a bigger box office failure than the Marvels. I hope you guys enjoyed this video today. This is my first one on my channel. If you want to, check out my short films that I have made, and also at the same time, click like and subscribe for more, and I'll catch you guys later.